left, right. Let me see you do it, left, do it, right, do it, left, do it, right.
The Houston Texans might just have a superstar on their hands in the form of CJ Stroud. The Rookie of the Month in September has been off to a historic start to his NFL career, and I'm sure Houston Rockets fans are rejoicing. I can't imagine that you guys thought he'd look this good 4 games in.
From the pocket for the end zone, the catch made! It's Nico Collins!
And I've been thinking about this for a long time. Y'all deserve to feel special. Y'all deserve to root the Texans on. Like, not winning since 2021, that ain't flying from, like, anybody in this building. I want them to know, like, we find our tails off every day to make sure y'all walk around with Texan gear pride.
Now, before we go ahead and look at all the positive things coming out of Houston and out of CJ Stroud's game and just all that overall energy he has going on through the city and through that fan base, I think it is important to look back at his pre-draft process and just remember where we were when it came to CJ Stroud just a few months ago. You got to start with the Wonderlic scores, where he graded by far the worst of all quarterbacks coming out of this year's draft. Now, yeah, to me and probably to you, Wonderlic scores mean absolutely nothing when it comes to what goes on the actual football field. But let's not sit here and act like people weren't coming at CJ Stroud for testing horribly and starting to question his ability on the field because of it. We should have known he was going to be just fine when he said this.
I'm not a test taker, so I play football for me. But at the end of the day, man, I don't got nothing to prove to nobody, so I'm not going to sit here and explain how I process football. The people who are making the picks know what I can do.
But if you couple the test scores with the stigma of Ohio State quarterbacks in the NFL, public perception wasn't looking too great leading up to the draft for CJ Stroud. But if you fast forward to draft day, I think that the Houston Texans obviously made the right choice when they picked him. I will say, out of the 3 quarterbacks picked in the top 4, I was most worried about CJ Stroud. Now, don't get me wrong, I thought CJ Stroud was the best passer coming out of the draft, and I was especially sold on him after that performance versus the Georgia Bulldogs in the college football semifinals. But it wasn't necessarily him that I was most worried about. It was the Texans organization. I wasn't sure if they were ready for a quarterback of that caliber, especially with what was going on in their organization the past 2 seasons. I also have a rule with young quarterbacks where I just feel 1,000,000% more comfortable if I see that young quarterback is going to have a high-level offensive coordinator or a high-level offensive mind at head coach to help guide him in the right direction as he tries to find his way through the very, very, very tough NFL. CJ has a first-year offensive coordinator and a defensive-minded head coach. Now, I don't want to take away from DeMeco Ryans. I think the world of him as well. I think he's the perfect head coach to bring Houston back to prominence, I guess, or maybe just to relevance. But when you look at the offensive side of things, there wasn't really anything that he could lean on that has been proven at the highest level of this league. Quick side note though, I do want to give credit to Bobby Slowick, first-year offensive coordinator for the Texans, because I think he's doing an incredible job of just keeping it simple for CJ Stroud through the first 4 games of his career. I'm not gonna lie, a young quarterback going into Baltimore against that super tough defense, I thought that he would look completely overwhelmed, and I couldn't be more wrong. He looked honestly great. I mean, for a rookie in his first start of his career, you couldn't have asked for more. I mean, obviously they lost. It wasn't very close, but at the same time, he never looked too overwhelmed, and I thought he had a very decent game all throughout. And honestly, that's probably my favorite thing about CJ Stroud. He never looks overwhelmed out there. The moment never feels too big. I see a guy that's always calm when the bullets start flying. He's also very decisive, and it seems like he knows where the ball is supposed to be at all times, and he never seems to hold on to it for too long. He has elite anticipation. He always seems to be throwing the ball in super tight windows that just make no sense if you're watching them at full speed. In week 2, I thought he took another massive step in the right direction. Just continued to show those flashes of really superstar level potential. However, in weeks 3 and 4 is when I really started to take notice into what this team could potentially be long term. These are 2 games that they're probably not supposed to win. And we also got to give a lot of credit to the offensive line for CJ Stroud's performances in weeks 3 and 4, because in weeks 1 and 2, they had allowed 11 combined sacks, and then in weeks 3 and 4, 2 clean sheets, 0 sacks each game. I also think he's surrounded by a very underrated group of wide receivers. He's developing great chemistry with Nico Collins, and also rookie Tank Dell, who's actually out of the University of Houston, who Stroud also specially requested on draft night.
I think it was like after he got drafted, you know, I sent him congrats. And then I was like, tell him come get me. I told him to tell him come get me and stuff like that. And then he was like, man, I told him I want you, yada, 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 this, that, and the third. So I was like, okay, it can happen. And then, you know, I got that call.
I'm extremely high on Tank Dell's long-term potential in this league. And we also can't forget about veteran wide receiver Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. That is a great security blanket to have for a young quarterback as well. Now, yes, he's looked fantastic. He's looked great. I hope that Houston Texan fans have hopefully healed from the Deshaun Watson situation now that they see that they have CJ Stroud. Let's not just look at what he's doing on the field, but also off of it.
I just want to say, man, like we're gonna keep fighting every day just so y'all can walk around with that swag. It's a blessing to be able to be in Houston, like a great town with a lot of stuff to do, great people, Southern hospitality to its finest, and I'm falling in love with the city little by little, so it's a blessing.
I feel like he's really trying to establish a culture for Houston Texan fans, and if you're a fan of this franchise and you hear your quarterback say this, how can you not absolutely love this dude? He is really just setting a good vibe around this franchise right now. There's a reason he's a captain of this team as a rookie. Now you combine that with hiring head coach D'Amico Ryans, who's a former middle linebacker for the franchise, who probably wants to bring that franchise back to prominence equally as bad as CJ Stroud. It just feels like in Houston, there's something special brewing.
Right, it's bigger than anything that we have going on, but we can change the hope of our city, the hope of our fans, just by going out providing a win, because they haven't felt this in a really long time. So let's go and change that narrative.
To close, I'm going to read you off some stats to really put in perspective how great CJ Stroud has been through the first 4 games of his career. He's the best statistical quarterback on third down in the entire league. And his 1,212 passing yards surpassed Andrew Luck and his 1,208 passing yards for the second most yards by a player in his first 4 games. He has the most pass attempts with 0 interceptions to start an NFL career, and he absolutely shattered the previous record held by Warren Moon. I'm telling you, man, something special is brewing in Houston. Right now is a great time to be a Houston Texans fan. You guys have suffered enough. Hopefully you guys continue to see those flashes throughout the rest of the season, and hopefully CJ can stay healthy, because that's what I want to see. I want to see him play the whole year. I want to see his progression. I want to see him continue to improve, because the future is bright for CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans.
This feeling, man, it's special. When it started at practice, we practiced off this week, man. That hot heat. Them boys was tired. Let's keep it up this week, man. Texans!